Rev up your engines!
All right, if you remember Sandy Monroe, he's an engineer, and he called the early Model 3 Teslas having quality equivalent to a Kia in the 1990s. When they weren't made all that well. Well, now he's analyzed the new Model 3. And he shows how there's bunches of gaps. One part would have a 1 millimeter gap, then the other one would have a 4 millimeter gap, and the doors weren't flush, and the headlight, turn signal assemblies, one side's flush, the other side isn't flush. Now, understand that this is from a guy. This guy actually owns Tesla stock. So it's to his advantage to say how great they are. You know? So if a guy who owns Tesla stock is showing these problems, imagine what a guy like me would do if they ever sent me a Tesla. Now, you know they're never going to send me a Tesla because they're afraid that Scotty's going to tell the truth and that, oh, well, look at bad PR, so we won't give them one. But believe me, one of these days, I'm going to get my hand on one, at least from somebody here in Tennessee, where I can analyze the thing in person, truthfully, and say what I really think about it. But this guy, who's an engineer, he said that, oh, you know, they've improved some, but he's kind of sad that they didn't improve them better than what he expected. Now, they're cheaply made. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. If you can't even get the body panels to match up right, they're just making them cheaply. And with modern technology, I see the new Kias. I'm not a Kia fan, but the doors match. The headlights fit in perfectly, and the tail lamps fit flush. Mind you, if they get wrecked, they don't, but when they're brand new, they do, and this was a brand new Model 3 that he was talking about. But to quote him, and this is a guy who owns Tesla stock, I was really hoping I was going to come out here and it was going to be so marvelous that I would have nothing bad to say. But once again, I was disappointed. And this is an engineer who owns Tesla stock. So, like I say, quality, maybe not such a big thing at the Tesla factory. But here we go, showing you the difference between the manufacturers and their actual dealers that sell you the car. Turns out in Florida that a Florida Ford dealership mistakenly sold a demonstrator Bronco to a guy who bought it, and then they wanted it back. And the guy's like, hey, I bought it. He said, well, that's our demo. We're supposed to have that as the demo. Well, hey, they sold it. And this shows you the difference between the dealerships and the manufacturers. The guy's like, what the heck? So he contacted Ford. Guess what Ford said? Ford said, oh, no, don't worry about it. You keep the car. I mean, it just shows you the greed and stupidity of a lot of these car dealerships. They're usually independently owned. Hey, they screwed up, and instead of being very apologetic and saying, you know, gee, we're kind of sorry, and we want the car back, we sold you the wrong one. Ford says, hey, he bought it, it's his. And at least here, Ford stood behind it. So the guy bought the car to your dealership, it's his now. Don't try to take it back from him. I mean, I see this stuff all the time where somebody goes to a dealer under warranty and they say, oh, well, that's not covered under warranty, or that, oh, no, that's normal, we don't need to fix that. Then the customer contacts the company, and the company says, no, that's not right, you need to fix this thing. Because they don't want to do anything for free at the dealerships. It was so bad in Houston that I actually saw dealerships that were shut down by the manufacturers. They said, you guys are doing a lousy job. You're no longer one of our dealers. Go away. And they refuted their ability to be a dealership for that company anymore. The biggest one, and I remember that in Houston, was Saab. They had dealers that were so crooked that Saab came in and actually took over the dealership. Now, a few years later, Saab went bankrupt, and that was the end of the dealerships entirely. But the company itself had taken over it. They had the one dealership in Houston that was owned by Saab Motor Company, because the people that had run the Saab ones, of course, Saabs are kind of a European snob car anyways, and they were really taking people to the coals more than a normal dealership. So Saab had to say, okay, you lose your license, we're going to run the only Saab dealership in town because of that. So don't always blame the manufacturers. A lot of times these problems, they're the dealers that are selling them, not the actual manufacturers. You ever have a problem, go direct to the manufacturers. They'll often take care of it because they got an image to portray. The other guy, hey, they don't make them. They're just a dealer that sells them. They're just basically salesmen. Neiman123 says, what's your opinion on transmissions that are remanufactured by a third party? Well, of course, it depends on who that third party is. Some are good, some are bad, some are terrible. Sometimes getting a used one from a junkyard proves to be better than what these people are going. I have found that from my own research, over 1/3 of the automatic transmissions rebuilt in the United States don't work right. They fail immediately. From putting in the cars, they don't work correctly. They're very complex. Sometimes the parts to fix them would actually cost more than they could charge for the transmission, so they're not going to do put those parts in. They're going to get 2 or 3 broken ones and take one piece off this, one off the other, and hope that it works. And especially since for the last 20 years, they've been using computer controls on transmissions. The guys that are rebuild them, a lot of times they can't even test them themselves until they put them in the car, because they don't have the equipment that they can put that on a dyno and run computer tests on it. They don't. So they're so complex that, you're always taking a gamble with a rebuilt one. Now, if you go, say, to a dealer and buy a remanufactured one from the dealer, they generally come with longer guarantees, and they're done quite well, but they're also very expensive. I had a guy over here the other day with a Japanese one. I said, you want a new transmission? He said, you can't get a new one, but you can get a factory reman one, and it's $3,800. Now, this is for a car that a guy paid $1,500 for, so a lot of times you're going to spend more money than the car is worth. That's why a lot of guys take gambles with junkyards and hope. Ahmed Tulin says, Scotty, I got a 2012 Mini Cooper S with 130,000 miles. It keeps getting out of time. It runs for a while, shuts down, and then it's out of time. I adjust the time and it works again. One, make sure you got it set up nice and tight for the timing. But odds are your timing chain and or belt, whichever that particular engine has, I believe that one has a timing chain, is stretched and you're going to need to replace it, because if you got to keep adjusting it, it's moving out, and a bad chain is what's going to do that all the time. Odds are you need a timing chain on that thing. They only last so long. They're kind of cheaply made vehicles. Even the S's, they're just a regular engine, but they're souped up, and the more you soup up that little bitty engine, it wasn't made to take that much power in the first place, the faster it's going to wear out. They're not cars you can really keep all that long. 130,000 miles, from my experience, that's pretty much the lifespan of those engines. And you even say here that you have rebuilt the engine before, so that shows you they aren't very well built engines. A Toyota, let's say, 130,000 is probably not even broken in yet, and you've already had to rebuild the mini engine. What Tirazah says, my wife's 2011 Sienna, 94,000 miles, has a timing chain cover leak. We bought it and I didn't see it. Should I worry about spending a huge repair cost or just drive it as it is? All right. That's kind of entertaining, because a lot of them seep a little bit of oil, right? And it is 10 years old. Almost invariably, 5-10 times a year, someone brings me one of those things and says, I just came back from the dealer. They said I got a leak in the timing chain cover and it's going to cost me $1,000-something to fix it, right? I say, who cares? It's not even reaching the ground. A little seep isn't going to hurt anything. With any used car that's 10 years old or more, you want to check the oil every once in a while. If it loses some added in it, might not just leak, it might burn it. Who knows? But check it every once in a while. Don't get suckered into that, because I've seen that so much. And I've told customers with those things like that, I'll say, look, it doesn't mean anything, watch it. And what do? They turn around and just keep driving the car, and then 5 years later I see them, and it's still not reaching the ground. It's just seeping a little. So don't be sold really expensive stuff by the dealership for minor things like that that really don't mean anything. I mean, it's gushing all over the place on the ground, yeah. But a little seep like that, it's normal on those things. Don't waste your money. Relax, it's me, 24 says, I got a family member I gave car advice, and she never listens. First time she asked me if a Chrysler 200 was good, and I told them it was one of the worst cars. Buy a Toyota or Honda. A few days later, I see a white 200 in her driveway. Luckily, the car was totaled in the flood. And now she asked me if a GMC Acadia was good, and I said, hey, buy a Toyota or Honda. What do I see on Facebook? Her standing in front of a new silver GMC Acadia. Thought I might share on why I no longer give her car advice. Well, some people that don't listen, hey, that's the way the world goes. You give good advice to people like I do, and hey, whatever they do with it, that's their business. If they want to keep making mistakes, hey, you give them what you can. You can't, hold people's hands too long and pull them in and say, no, don't buy this. Give them advice. They don't listen. Hey, some people only learn by mistakes. And in the case of your family member, they certainly don't even learn that, because they went out and didn't listen again. So some people, I guess, actually never do learn. So if you're one of those people that never do learn, you shouldn't be watching me then. I got too many things to teach you about cars. And if you're not going to listen, what's the point? Mutalba says, please make fun of this. This guy told me he got a great deal on a BMW 5 Series with over 120,000 miles. He bought it for $2,000. He's only 15. Well, I don't want to make fun of a 15-year-old kid. Wait a second. How did this 15-year-old kid got $2,000? I mean, hey, if he made it on his own, I'll give him kudos for that. Now, of course, $2,000 is nothing for a BMW. If the thing actually does run, what the heck? He could probably sell it to somebody else for more money. People do like those cars. And if he only paid $2,000, and if the body and everything's clean, people all the time here in Clarksville. They're looking for cars like that for $2,000, and then they sell it to the soldiers when they come back from deployment who have $20,000 signing bonus to spend, and they might sell it for $5,000 or $6,000. So maybe the kid isn't as dumb as you think he is. Never, criticize what somebody's doing unless you know the entire story. Maybe he's going to flip it. Or maybe it's in good shape. I've seen people around here get them for $2,000 and drive them for a while, and they're fun cars. Yeah, they can be endless money pits. There's no arguing that. But $2,000 is nothing. And if it's all clean and everything, hey, the guy might be parting it out. He might buy that car for $2,000. If it's all clean, leather seats, engine and transmission working good, he could part it out all over the world, make a whole bunch of money on it. So you never know. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.